Good evening. How you doing, Gabs?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm doing well. How are you, Dr. Payne?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. Well, thank you for uh really to be the mama bear and save the children from those indoctrination.
Yeah, I don't think I had a choice. I mean, that's kind of
No,
what
no,
moms do, right?
exactly. Yeah. So when uh when did everything started? When did you starting to notice something is wrong?
Well, with my son, as it pertains to the CRT, it was during the initial lockdown.
Okay.
Uh, in the pandemic. So that was, when the distance learning started. I started hearing some things in my daughter's classroom that I thought was weird, and I didn't approve. And so I switched her to another school
Okay.
and checked on my son and asked him what was going on in his classroom. And that was when he showed me all of the um, all of the slides and stuff from the sociology of change class, and the assignments that they were giving, asking him to list his identities and attach signifiers to those. So they asked his sex, his race, his gender, his gender his sexual identity. I mean, his sexual preference, stuff like
Okay.
that. His religion, those types of thing, and then he was to attach oppressed or privileged to those things.
Oh wow.
And my son is I'm biracial, and his father is white,
Mm.
so he looks like a white kid. So he's a
Okay.
white straight male, Judeo-Christian
Oh
values. So he's
wow.
just he's just privileged.
Right.
So he's
Yeah.
just an oppressor. Is that what? So
Wow.
that wasn't okay. At the time we were living in a motel. I was recovering from being in a wheelchair for several years, and we
Oh
had not
wow.
yet gotten back on our feet, and William was sleeping on a mattress on the floor. So you know saying that somehow that because my son is too white, that makes him privileged, or that white people are privileged at all,
Right. Right.
is completely and totally asinine. We ask that they allow him to opt out of that class. They refused to do that. So we took matters into our own hands, and we filed a lawsuit, um, in a compelled speech lawsuit in December of 2020.
Okay.
And by April, or yeah, by April, they relented and allowed him to opt out of that class. They expunged his record, thereby allowing him to graduate, because
Oh,
they
okay.
weren't going to let him graduate.
Wow.
And so during the and we're still fighting that because the damage had already been done.
Right.
Our family suffered greatly throughout that situation, and we're still having to deal with the consequences of the choices of the school.
Right.
So, and
So I
while I was fighting for my son, my daughter,
mm,
um, was socially transitioned into a boy at school,
oh wow.
and
Without without you knowing it, right? Without any parental involvement.
I didn't know that that's what happened at school. I mean, she had, she did tell me that she wanted to be a boy, but I didn't know that they had, started using masculine pronouns and calling her
Okay.
by a boy's name and stuff like that. I didn't know that they were doing that,
Oh
and
wow.
no, they didn't talk to me about it. They didn't tell me anything about it. I didn't know anything about it. But I noticed some real serious changes in my daughter.
Right.
And I chalked it up to uh being a teenager in this weird time because of the pandemic. I thought that all of the kids were kind of having, problems because of the lockdowns.
Mm.
Um, and w- last year we came to Houston for a visit, and we were here for about a month. And while we were here,
Mm.
she went back to being her normal, lovely, um, cheerful, sweet self.
Mm.
And that was when I realized that there was that this wasn't the pandemic. This was not the way teenagers are right now. This was something having to do with the
Wow.
environment.
Yeah. How old was your daughter at that time?
She's in middle school. She was in
Hmm.
middle school. Mhm.
So that's middle school is a transitional time. It's not easy just in any normal situations. And now she was putting such a pressure. I guess I don't know, the pressure is from the teachers or from her peers to, like, in a way, to kind of um, encourage her to do this transition,
Well,
to
I
be
think it
translated
comes from
into boy.
yeah, it comes from, multiple different sources because, you can't, I mean, she's only at school for a few, for 8 hours a day.
Hmm.
But, this stuff was being reinforced by her peers and by, her online community of friends.
Okay.
So, between the environment and her choice of friends and the social media component,
Right.
the whole thing it captured my daughter. And I really, but the only I feel like the only aspect of this that was could have been helped and could have been dealt with in the situation that should not have happened is that the school should not have kept it from me, and
Right.
they should have spoken with me about what was going on with my daughter, especially if they thought that she was having some existential crisis going on, like needing to be a boy.
Okay.
That's one of those things that I would think, you would want parents to know so that they can help their children.
Right. Right. And I think this is actually is in a way uh, not just isolated cases. It seems like all over the country that the schools are doing this behind the parents' back, and i- I know some situations the school actually purposely not telling the parents.
Yes, I mean that was one of the reasons why I decided to speak out. I mean, I'm already embroiled in a very serious disagreement with my son's school over
Right.
CRT indoctrination. And while I'm in the process of fighting for my son and raising awareness across the country on that front, behind my back my daughter is being indoctrinated,
Wow.
and I thought that I had a close enough relationship with the people at the school that they would inform me if something like this was had become an issue. And when I realized that that wasn't the case, I was very upset. And that's when I started to realize this is happening more often than people actually think it is. And what made me what made me speak out is upon hearing about Abigail Martinez's story, about her daughter being taken away by CPS and subsequently killing herself by stepping in front of a train. That
Wow.
that made me that compelled me to make the decision
Wow.
to go public with what was happening with my daughter, because people already knew that I was already fighting indoctrination in school, and not only that, but I wanted parents to understand that you could be a fighter in
Right.
this situation. You could be a doctor, you could be a psychiatrist. I've had there have been I've had parents call me and talk to me. They're doctors, and
Mm,
their kids are being transitioned. Now these are kids who know the science, who know
right,
biology,
right,
because of what their parents do, and they're still being indoctrinated. Me, I'm an advocate for um, for free speech, and I'm
right.
fighting indoctrination, and my child still got indoctrinated. That's
Wow.
how terrible this all is.
Right,
And I
right,
don't want to see any more uh, sad stories like Abigail Martinez. If anything, she spoke out so that the rest of us could do everything that we can to fight for our own children.
right. Yeah, there is actually a case in Indiana that the girl was 12 years old, and the school was help her to get those hormone treatment because she wants to become a boy, and without the parents knowing about it, but the parents still on the hook to pay for all those medical expense and all that. So it's kind of, in a way, it's a incredible, right? I mean, it's something, how to say, you just cannot make this up. If you're trying to write a story, trying to make something up, you couldn't, right? This is just like even
It's
stranger than,
unfathomable. It is
right,
unfathomable. It is absolutely stranger than fiction. And that too was one of the reasons why I said, you know, a lot of people that make these claims, nobody believes them. Nobody believes them because it just seems so unreal.
right,
But because I was already involved with indoctrination, and I already have the credibility, and I already have the platform,
right,
I just felt like, it, I wouldn't be a very good activist if I didn't speak out about something that is literally killing children all across the country. The suicide rate has just gotten completely and totally just unbelievably high
right,
with these children, whether they transition fully or not. Even the detransitioners, this stuff, they're captured by a cult, and a lot
right,
of the times that really does distort reality, and sometimes in the most tragic cases, the victim of this
right.
succumbs to their despair.
Wow. So, did you talk with the uh, school administrations? Uh,
No, I have not yet gotten to that point. You know, first and foremost, my main objective really had been to get my daughter out
Right.
of that environment, and make sure that she was safe, and
Mm,
make sure that she was facing reality, and accepting who she is, and
right.
understanding that there's nothing wrong with her. Everybody has problems, everybody has troubles. You work through those. You don't need
Right. Right.
to go into this um psychological tailspin, just in order to quote unquote fit in with some of these other people. And they're not even, the it's a cult. I mean, the social
Mm,
media aspect of this is so disgusting. And when I went and looked on all of her social media, it was a lot of teenage kids reaffirming each other and feeding
right.
off of each other.
Right.
And then of course you have a bunch of men that are just have some sort of paraphilia, some sort of autogynephilia, that are predating on these young children. um
Wow.
and it's they wouldn't exactly, I mean, there wouldn't exactly be anything that would be considered illegal, but it was certainly inappropriate for a discussion with a child.
Right.
Um, so um, that's why I decided to come up with a plan and formulate a plan to get my daughter out of the situation.
Okay.
And I've been working on trying to convey the steps and the phases that I implemented in our lives to change the environment for my daughter and
Oh,
and pull her out of this cult,
okay. So you
recapture her.
so you pull her out from the school, right?
We left the city. We left the
You left the
entire city.
city. Wow.
Yes.
You
Well,
left the
I
entire
pulled her
city.
out of the
Okay.
school. Yes. I
Mm,
pulled her out of the school. That was the first step. I pulled her out of the school and we came back home to my hometown of Houston. I
mm,
pulled her out of the school. We got rid of social media and the majority of the devices that she was using to detox her from her social media addiction.
wow.
And I surrounded her with friends and family. That was the first step in deprogramming her.
Wow.
There was a lot of preparation and planning that went into that first step. That
Mm,
was that was the first phase, the first
wow.
three steps of the first phase. So
Right.
I mean, I'm working on um, compiling a list of the second phase. Um, but that gets a little bit more complicated. And seeing as how I am not a licensed therapist, I want to make sure that I convey the steps that I took responsibly. So I'm still formulating the plan to um, to release so that other parents can look at the things that I've done and
Right.
maybe tailor a plan for their own children.
Wonderful. Yeah. So how can other parents contact you and if they need help?
You know, I'm on Twitter, on Truth Social, and on Getter,
Mm,
and under at Gabs Clark 5. And you can also email me at gabs5minds at icloud.com. That's GABS, the number 5,
mm,
MINDS at icloud.com.
okay.
And, I speak to parents all the time. As a matter of fact, this has become my full-time job. There's anywhere from 10 to 16 hours a day that I am working on just this. And the
Wow.
stories are heartbreaking. A lot of
Yeah.
the parents that I've spoken with, their children have already grown up and there's nothing that they can do.
Wow.
And they had been told what we all had been told previously when children were exhibiting behaviors that were customarily for the opposite sex. We were taught to just be watchful and wait. And watchful waiting, and
Mm,
they would grow out of it. But this is not the same thing. So
right.
a lot of these parents were practicing watchful waiting, and then their kids didn't grow out of it, and that was because they did not realize that this was not organic. This was their children had been captured by a cult.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, just from the children's perspective, because he hear the things in school, right? I mean, the transgender and all that is they made it such a kind of like a uh, kind of like fashion or kind of something cool to do, right? Uh,
Trendering.
right, and
Yeah.
then they hear from the social media, then they hear from their peers, and also the entertainment industry also pushing things like that. It's make that into something. Uh, so it's yeah, it is hard for kids nowadays.
Yes, I mean, this is a social contagion and it is everywhere. I mean, it
Mm,
is very, very, we're seeing the crazy prevalence in the entertainment community.
right.
And the entertainment community, they provide us with entertainment and they do that by, being professional make believers.
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, at some point, they decided to bring their work home with them, and now they've turned everything into some make believe movie fantasy, and that's just not the case. These children are really being harmed by this.
Right.
There are kids that like my daughter that were really struggling, and I'm talking about some serious struggles. There was a lot of depression and anxiety, and self-harm, and those kinds of things, a
Wow.
disconnect between myself and my daughter, and isolation, just all kinds of things that these children are really being being pulled into because they otherwise would not experience that stuff. I mean,
Right.
this is cruel. It's cruel to do this to children, and it is devastating for parents to go through.
Right.
Luckily for me, I had already had a lot of research and information on what was going on, so I was able to pull my daughter out.
Right.
And that was from a multitude of different aspects. A lot of the aspects of the social media addiction was very similar to the gambling addiction that I had seen
Wow.
living in Las Vegas for so long.
Wow.
So there's aspects of this that I was able to latch onto and to formulate a plan to pull my daughter out. But a lot of parents don't have that kind of insight. So I'm doing
No.
everything that I can to create that to
Yeah.
at the very least, give them a blueprint.
Right. And also, I really appreciate that you are sharing your story to, to everyone, to parents. So parents needs to be, uh, uh, they need to wake up to realize the danger because most of them don't even know, right?
Yes, unfortunately, most parents don't understand. They don't know, and they don't realize that when their son or daughter comes home and says, "Well, I'm non-binary," and they want to be open-minded and they want to be accepting. But this is not the same thing as the coming out stories that we were used to when we were young.
Right.
So, if this is not the 90s, and we're not talking about the same kind of coming out scenario. This
Right.
is not coming out. They're being
Yeah.
captured by a cult, and that is very different, and that is a very different situation. And it's something that parents need to familiarize themselves with, and if they're experiencing it, they can certainly reach out for help, and there is help available. Not a lot, and there's not a whole lot of professional help available,
Right.
because the
Right.
recommended treatment is affirmation.
Right.
But a lot of therapists, and behavioral health specialists and mental health specialists, they don't believe in affirmation, but they can't say anything because they're risking their licenses.
Right.
So when your licensure is at risk, then you tend to care more about that, and on the balance of utility, it's better for them to keep their licenses, so that when there is a crack in this nightmare, and doctors and medical professionals and psychiatrists and start speaking out and start making a big enough fuss about the direction that this is taking, then there will be therapists that can be reached to help. But until then, we're having to do the best we can with the tools that we have available, and
Right.
that's why I've been working on that. I've been
Right.
working on it full time.
Right. Wow. So, are you suing the school district? You
Um,
mentioned about lawsuit. Are you suing the school
well,
district or the school?
for my son, we already filed a lawsuit on behalf of my son.
Okay.
On behalf of my daughter, I don't have any concrete evidence that anything occurred um, at my daughter's
Okay.
school. All
Okay.
I know is that, what my daughter has told me.
Right.
And so we're still evaluating that situation, and I may not be able to, know everything because she is just a kid. So
Mm.
I may not be able to find out everything, or maybe not enough to know to find out, to figure out what to do about that situation.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah.
that's what's most upsetting, is that there's no recourse for most parents. Abigail Martinez, no matter what happens, she will never have her daughter back.
Right.
And so there the the contagion, the social contagion, needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be eradicated
Right.
from our society. And I feel like the only way that that's going to happen is if the parents get together and make it clear that this is not something that we're going to entertain in our education system or in our society
Right.
anymore.
Right. Yeah. In a way, actually, parents are against uh, how to say, almost against all the society now, right? Because the society at large is basically more conforming. Or if you want to become a boy, then that's a good thing to do and all that. So now parents basically saying, no, that's not right. But then that caused that uh, it's kind of uphill battle.
Yeah, I mean, parents have definitely been vilified for the last year and a half. I mean,
Right.
we're domestic terrorists and all of
Yeah.
this other nonsense.
Right.
But you know what? Nobody loves my child more than me.
Exactly.
She came from my body. There
Right.
isn't a single person, there isn't a group of people that love my daughter as much as I do.
Right.
So I'm not going to intentionally harm her. If she were trans, then I would be doing everything I could to support that.
Right.
But she's not, and I know that, because that's not her personality. And
Mm.
this is going way beyond just the transgender aspect. This is,
Right.
like I said, it's a cult. It's a cult, and the cult like behavior that goes along with it, the addiction to the social media,
Right.
and the nihilism that goes along with it, all of it. That is not living your best life. You know what I mean?
No.
That's
No.
not
No.
what that
Right.
is.
Right.
That is a cult, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to let my daughter be captured by a cult without a fight.
Right. And how can parents uh what can parents do to find out what's really going on about their children?
Unfortunately, in this particular situation, it is difficult. With if you, I mean, you can. There's all kinds of FOIA requests that you can do to find out exactly what is being taught in the curriculums, and in some of them, some of the gender ideology stuff, it is in the curriculum. It
Mm.
is it's embedded in the pedagogy. It's part of the, it's all an aspect of the critical praxis, right? So you can find that stuff out. But sometimes, and sometimes there is a gender transition plan being put in place. I think they have it in California, where you can actually FOIA your child's gender transition plan if you believe that that child is being transitioned,
Oh wow.
as socially transitioned at school. So it depends on what state you're in, but in my particular situation, I don't know that there could have been anything that I could have done other than to ask the school. And, unfortunately, when you ask those kinds of questions, they lie.
Right.
Not to say that they would have lied to me, but I mean, I, I believe that they would not have told me the truth.
Right.
Um, and so, I feel like if you think that your child is being socially transitioned at school, if they're using the opposite sex pronouns, or if they're having people call them by an opposite sex name, a different name,
Hmm.
or if they're talking about gender non-conforming or non-binary or any of that stuff, then you need to do something, and you need to do it
Hmm.
immediately.
Wow.
I am doing everything that I
Right.
can to try to create a blueprint for parents to be able to look at and base a game plan for their own children on.
Right.
And I've been working on that for probably the last month. Um, and unfortunately, it's a
Right.
full-time endeavor.
Right.
And the other thing that parents can do is, if they are at if they're at a loss for what to do for their own children, then for heaven's sakes, help those of us who are getting somewhere.
Right.
There's lots of organizations that could really use the funding, because the woke left is
Hmm.
very well funded, and
Right.
a lot of this stuff, you know, our stuff isn't. There are a handful of people that are fighting against this,
Right.
and
Right.
we're all doing it pretty much full time and on our own dime.
Right.
So
Exactly.
please, for heaven's sakes, you can donate directly to me. I have a
Hmm.
Give Send Go / support the Clarks.
Hmm.
And that helps to for the cost of living, so that I can continue to do this.
Right.
There are times when I speak to parents anywhere from an hour to 3 hours in one sitting, and like I said, I'm doing this from 10 to 16 hours a day,
Right.
working on this,
Wow.
because it is, my emails and my DMs are completely full, and I am doing everything I can to help as many people as I can, and hopefully those people can reach out to somebody else,
Right.
and we can heal this social contagion, one child at a time.
Right. And also, uh, and parents needs to be like you know, really, uh, to be courageous, just to, mean, trust trust our parental instincts.
Right.
We know our kids more than anybody else. So sometimes they just throw you, oh, you don't know anything. We are the experts. So they are trying to gaslighting us parents.
Yes, I've created a term for that. I call that parallel language messaging. So anytime there is this parallel language that these people use,
Mm,
in order to distract you from doing what is your parental instincts. Right.
right.
So you know that something is wrong. You can't exactly put your finger on it. You go to ask somebody, and then they give you some word salad, and
Right.
then at the end of it, you're going, what?
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know what they're talking about. Or there's a redefining of words,
Right.
gaslighting, word cyclones, circular thinking. All of that stuff falls under the category of parallel language messaging. And this is what we
Mm,
experience from my son's situation. And it has also transcended into what we're discovering with the social emotional learning, that has created the transgenderism cult, or the not
wow.
the gender theory, or whatever you want to call it. Like I said, it all falls under the umbrella of what I call parallel language messaging.
That is very, very good. I think that really is what exactly going on. You really described that, perfectly. Yeah, they have their own vocabularies. They redefine the words. So and still their attitude is still that they are the experts. So
Well, guess what? I'm quickly becoming an expert myself.
right, right. Yeah, but
And
because
you know what? The school of hard knocks is really teaching
right.
me some good lessons right
Yeah,
now.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like yeah, it's just in a way just so shocking. I mean, they they
Hmm.
were they were doing those to the kids. They are supposed to protect them, right? Supposed to. I think in the past, us parents just like trust the school, trust the teachers, and trust them are doing the best for the kids. But it turns out that's not the case.
That isn't the case. And I mean, a long time ago, we were taught about stranger danger, and there were people that in the community that you could trust, the policemen,
Right,
the pastor, the teachers.
right,
Those are the people that you could trust and you could go to if you had a problem. And now we're quickly learning that that's not the case anymore. And part of the steps that I have been working on, the last phase of that process is for inoculation. So I want to cook. I'm still working on all of this. Like I said, I want to do it responsibly, but the last phase of this is inoculation, so that we can know how to instruct our kids to discern what is real and what is not real, and what is safe and what is not safe, who
right,
is a friend and who isn't.
right,
So those kinds of things we have to make adjustments to what we previously had been teaching our children, or previously had understood as adults even.
mm,
And that's the inoculation phase of this whole system.
yeah,
And I'll be developing that in
right,
the
right,
coming months, to roll out. Like I said, I've already started in with the first phase in this last week, with my threads on Twitter, and I'm going to be developing that. But like
okay,
I said, this is
right,
my only job. So
right,
anybody out there who's ready to
yeah,
see that process, come, on paper, and
right,
be able to get a copy of the process that I use to bring my daughter out of this cult. Please, by all means, um, make a contribution,
right,
to our Give Send Go / support the Clarks, so that I
right,
can continue this work. I
yeah.
really do think that it's invaluable, to help parents not only get their children out if their children are captured, but to prevent their children from being captured with inoculation.
Right, exactly. It's like sometimes it's easier when there is a physical danger, right? But it's much harder when this is mental, this is spiritual. But the
Yeah,
danger is there, is real, right?
right.
It's
The
just,
danger is very real.
mhm,
When your child is getting ready to touch a hot stove, you can grab them.
mhm,
But when they're suffering from some sort of psychological abuse or
right,
addiction or something like that, that is more difficult. That
right,
is a more difficult problem to tackle, and it is hard to know which direction to take. Like I said, we thought that watchful waiting was the way to go, and we had been told for years that that was the way to go, and our children would grow out of it.
right,
And we're finding out that this is not the same. This is not the same animal.
right,
The children are being captured by a cult.
mm,
They're not experimenting with their gender. I mean, with their dysphoria. With
right,
their
right,
own, with their own puberty and all of that whole business. It's not that. It's
right,
something else.
exactly. And you set a very good example, and you took in a way kind of radical actions. You took your daughter out of school and you moved to a different state. Sometimes I think parents need to do that.
You know what? I'm gonna, and you know what? This is not gonna be popular for me to say this, but if you are not willing to sacrifice everything to
Hmm.
save your child, then you're not doing enough.
Right.
The you would not just stand there and let your child get hit by a car.
Right.
You would go and knock that child out of the way, and even if that ended your life, you would still do it.
Right. Exactly.
And so all of the parents that take the position that they don't want to lose their jobs, or they don't want to be canceled or whatever, I hate to say this, but on your head be it, because you need to understand that this is not something that you can just wish away, or you
Right.
can just wait it out and it'll go away. Now, if
Right.
you're okay with your kid transitioning, then I guess then it's not that big a deal, I guess. But if you're not, if you know that your child is suffering
Right.
because of this, there's a lot of these kids are they're suffering way worse. Kids are they're committing suicide. They're engaging in very risky behaviors and
Right.
self-harm.
Right.
And there's porn addictions, and autogynephilia, developing developing sexual addictions later on. This is not something that you can just ignore and think that everything will be fine. There is
Right.
no happy ending to this. there is
Yeah.
there is only
Exactly.
pain.
Right. It it just so similar to like when your kids became addicted to drugs, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of in that kind of probably even more because they are psychologically damaged.
Yes. Yes, there is a psychological damage that happens, and a lot of the times, if you don't catch it in time, it's irreversible and it is lifelong. And
Right.
even if they decide to desist, there's still some scars, that
Mhm.
may remain. And if they
Right.
get to a place where they have started to medically transition,
Yeah.
and even if they detransition later, there are permanent damages
Right.
that are done. And there are things that are permanent. There's a real lie in the medical community that you can stop your hormone treatment and everything will be fine. That is a lie. That's
Right.
not true.
Hmm.
Even if you're lucky enough to escape physical problems, you're still going to suffer the psychological problems that stem from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, thank you so much. I really admire your courage and also your what you are doing to not only help your own kids but also help other people's kids.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye bye.
Mm.